线长山又高，处处港口都显耀。
Hello and welcome back to another episode of Strait Talk, where we dive deep into the Taiwan Strait, the pivotal front line of the battle between Western hegemony and Eastern resistance, bringing you a perspective of Taiwan, mainland China, and beyond, not typically presented by mainstream media. Today, I am in the city of Shenyang, capital of Liaoning Province, where there is a very deep history that you're going to learn about here with my friend, Mr. Mario Cavolo. Mr. Mario, thank you very much for being on my show.
You finally made it to Shenyang.
Right.
We've been talking about this for months.
And it's really hard to believe that I'm seeing you in person because the first time I saw you was in a TV drama.
What TV drama was that?
雄赳赳气昂昂，跨过鸭绿江. Crossing the Yalu River.
Wait. Okay, let me. I'll give it to you right here. Listen to me. We're gonna cross the Yalu River. We're gonna blow up all the bridges and we're gonna destroy the Chinese once and for all.
You know,
unbelievable.
It is. It's a shame though that a lot of your dialogue got replaced by some other voice actor.
Don't even talk about that. Right. That was because I got sick.
Right.
So
they were doing ADR and you got sick.
I got sick. So what happened was I shot the front 2 weeks, and it was in Beijing in Henan Province, and about an hour outside of Beijing, where crossing the Yalu River was being shot. I went for 2 weeks, and I shot. And then about 3 weeks later, I went back to shoot some more. And the second time I went, I got sick, like with laryngitis. So my voice was different. So in editing, my voice was different in all the scenes. Uh-huh. And then they were really, what they told me, I was so mad because they didn't have time because they were on a really tight deadline. They were editing on the spot as they were doing scenes every day.
Wow.
It was on a rush. This movie, the TV series came out in December.
2020?
It was unbelievable. And I was shooting in like October, and they got it out in December, which is insane. It
wow.
normally takes like 6 months, right?
Oh, they did it in 2?
It was incredible. Well, they were editing on the fly, and what happened was they were just like, we didn't have time. We were in urgent rush in the editing bay. And so they got a local guy to dub over the voice because my voice was different, and I was I have to say that wasn't a good thing.
Yeah, but hey, your performance was still very great. And I think this is very interesting because the reason why I'm even in Shenyang is because I have relatives here, and the reason why I have relatives here is because of General MacArthur, because of this guy over here. Wow. So
maybe your relative, was it good or bad though for your relatives? So this is important. I mean, I know we can talk later about what MacArthur did. We're going to talk about history today.
Right.
And we're talking about...
This is just the tip of the iceberg of Shenyang history, by the way.
Right. It's amazing. We're talking about amazing history here in Northeast China. Mm-hmm. This was where the Qing dynasty, you mentioned it earlier during lunch, was founded. Mm-hmm. But it also ties into both our family histories. And that's what I love. Right. So we're not going to talk politics today.
So do you want me to start talking about my family history?
I do. It's incredible. You just said because of General MacArthur, and I researched that role. I learned so much about Chinese history, Japanese history, Korean history, U.S. history, because I was asked to play General MacArthur in that movie. It changed. It really was a transition in my life, and it happened, as you mentioned, in 2020. And as a result, also, we'll talk about later, I've actually done my own Korean War documentary, a 40-minute piece, and we're working on that because the history needs to be told more clearly and properly as to what really went on.
I really agree with that, which is why just last night I was recording an interview with my aunt who was caught up in the Korean War, and it has to do with my family history that you were asking me about. Yes.
Okay, so you tell us about this family history that happened. You're saying it's because of MacArthur, but did it have a good result for the family in some ways or a bad result in some ways? I mean, what happened?
It's difficult to say good or bad. Yeah. A war is a tragedy, and my family got separated by the Korean War.
Yep.
So my grandfather is from the province of Shandong in the Central Plains area of China, and he was born in 1910, and his older brother, I believe, was I think 2 years or more older than him. I'm not exactly sure how many years they are apart. But Shandong was a very impoverished area during the late Qing dynasty and the early Republican era. So as a young child, my grandfather, my paternal grandfather, was a child laborer who learned carpentry. And during that time, it was popular to what they called 闯关东, which was to go to the northeast of China. And back then, it was occupied by the Japanese. It was occupied by the Japanese, but there were employment opportunities for those in more impoverished areas of China. So it was a choice that many people made, especially from Shandong. You look at many people from northeastern China today, they have their ancestral provinces are in Shandong, and it's for this reason. Now, during some time when my grandfather and my great uncle, so my grandfather's older brother, were in northeastern China, they found out that there were some better paying jobs and more employment opportunities in Korea. And keep in mind, this was when both northeastern China and Korea were
occupied by Japan.
Yes. So to them, it wasn't really much of a
It
border
wasn't
crossing.
that different.
Yeah,
it wasn't that
different.
different. Either way, it was occupied by Japan.
Right. And they never really had the intention of leaving Shandong permanently, but history happens. Now, when my grandfather went to Korea, they were in the city of Hichun, which is in what is now North Korea. It's in Chagang Province. Chagang Province borders. I think it borders Jining Province, or maybe Jining and Liaoning. Not exactly sure, but it's in the middle. And during that time, there weren't too many Chinese people in Hichun. It was a very tight-knit community. And most of the people over there in Hichun, most of the Korean locals were quite friendly. But unfortunately, because it was a Japanese colony, there were, some malign forces in Korea with the backing of the Japanese. So during that time, one Chinese migrant worker, was beaten by one of these Koreans. So my grandfather was a member of the Overseas Chinese Association over there, and he went to try to seek justice, and one thing led to another. They started beating him, and there was a fight. They tried to kill him. They were trying to kill him. Wow. So he had to escape Hichun, and he went into hiding. This was in 1943. So he went into hiding for 2 years. And by the time the Japanese were defeated,
2 years later.
2 years later, on August 15th, when they surrendered in 1945, my grandfather was in Seoul. Now, sometime during the time between 1945 and 1948 was when the two Korean governments were established. But in 1945, the two halves of Korea became occupied by the Soviet and U.S. forces. So during that time, I don't believe my grandfather was able to go back to Hichun to reunite with his brother. But before the conflict, I think they were still able to send mail, because my aunt told me, my aunt is my grandfather's older brother's daughter, told me that as a kid. And
you interviewed her last night.
Yes.
Here in Shenyang.
She was 7 when the Korean War happened.
I have to meet her later. Okay,
right.
Keep going.
So she would tell me how my grandfather used to send clothes and stuff to her from Seoul. Now, 5 years later, in 1950, the Korean War broke out. And when the Korean War broke out, my grandfather, eventually at some point, you want to get, during a war, your biggest priority as a civilian is to just get out of the line of fire. Going north was not an option for my grandfather, so he went to Busan for a while. Now, my relatives in North Korea, in Hichun, the train station got bombed, and that's when they knew the war was entering a new phase. Yeah. So in order to survive, they went up to the mountains. Now, this was in, I believe, around August, so it was still not too cold. They did, in their minds, this war wasn't going to drag on for 3 years. They thought it would be over shortly.
It started in June.
Right.
We know June 25th, and again, that's a whole nother subject.
Right.
Okay, North Korea didn't start it, but
right.
That's a whole nother story. And then, so you were 2 months later into August, and then September. It was October when the Chinese government stepped in,
right.
started getting involved, and then it was when the Chinese forces surprised MacArthur's.
Surprised you.
It was in November.
Right.
Yeah.
So they were hiding in the mountains, and during that time, two Chinese people's volunteers found where my aunt's family was hiding in the mountains, and they told her family, "Hey, you're Chinese. Our motherland has just been liberated. the people have land now, and the old feudal landlords have been overthrown. Please go back to China where you'll be safe.
That's what Mao Zedong was doing. That's what the whole Civil War and Long March was about.
Right. Now, part of the reason why my aunt's family did not escape back to China back then was because my great uncle, her father, was very sick and could not move. He was bedridden. So when the Chinese People's Volunteers heard about it, they managed to borrow a mule cart from a Korean neighbor. And then they took my great uncle to a hospital to get treated, gave him a few shots. He was barely able to walk, but he could still walk with a cane. And that's when they started their trek back to China. And it was a very difficult time for them. You know, my aunt told me this one story.
What was the month on that? Was it getting cold yet?
It was getting cold.
So this was after the Chinese had already attacked?
Yeah. Yes. When they were found by the Chinese People's Volunteers.
Oh, so this was after November?
Yes.
Oh man.
So
see, that's the thing. No one thought it would. I mean, it had gone on. June, July, August, September, October. 5 months. Could have been done by then. Should have been done by then. MacArthur is the reason, and we'll talk about it later. And then those winters for the Korean Peninsula. I mean, people think what's going on in Gaza is bad. What was going on in the Korean Peninsula was really the beginning of all this, and it was a disaster in the wintertime. It was brutal.
It has to have been mid-November because my aunt told me that once they started escaping, it took them a month and a half to get to China. So if my calculation is correct, they went on the road in November, mid-November. Now, it was a very difficult time. Anything that moved during the day was fair game for the U.S. Air Force. And if you cooked during the day, there was smoke, and where there's smoke, there's going to be bombs.
Unbelievable.
So there were a few times where they got really hungry. And one day, my aunt said that her life was saved by a Chinese People's Volunteer because, they were at the front line, but there was logistics and people sending stuff to the front line. So there's always people traveling back and forth with the Chinese People's Volunteers between the front line and China. And she was starving and she was lying down. A Chinese People's Volunteer saw her and gave her his food rations for the day. And the food rations was just like a little roll that's about the size of a fist. That was his food for the day that he gave to her.
It's that compressed wheat bread.
Right.
Hard as a rock.
Right. And she ate it
rations.
And she was able to get back up. But before she could thank him, he had already gone because he had to stay with the rest of his people.
Yeah.
And she tears up when she tells this story.
I'll bet.
Yeah. And eventually they made it back to China. On December 30th of 1950, they got to Shenyang, which is the North Korean city across from Dandong. And then they did their paperwork, and on December 31st, they crossed the bridge back into China. But even as they were crossing the bridge, they were being shot at by U.S. planes. Yeah. So that's the reason why my family's in Shenyang, because they had a cousin or a family friend living in Shenyang. So they helped them get settled. And the Chinese government helped them get jobs, have a place to stay. And then as soon as they got back to China, they were doing stuff like playing support roles. My great uncle was, shutting boxes for supplies that were going to the front line.
Wow.
Yeah, and I guess it was their way of expressing their gratitude towards the soldiers who saved them.
You know that the Korean War here in China, is referred to as
抗美援朝.
Yes, and in English, it was the war against U.S. aggression on the Korean Peninsula.
It's the war to resist U.S. aggression and aid Korea.
Yeah. Yes. Because the Chinese reluctantly but did step in, and MacArthur didn't believe.
Said Chinamen couldn't fight.
Yeah, MacArthur thought that China was too wrapped up with its own problems and its own challenges from the years that it had been through, and his intelligence officers kept telling him, we have indications that the Chinese are amassing along the zones, along the borders, and MacArthur kept scoffing at the idea.
He was arrogant.
Well, not only that, but actually I want to cover this because It's in the script of the Korean War documentary. We were talking about it earlier. You said MacArthur did this to your family. He did. He did it. It was him and Truman. And what happened was, by October, China had enough. China had seen what the situation was, and then China publicly stated through the UN to the UN command, which this was the United Nations forces led by the United States. Okay, that's officially what it was.
Right.
And even though it was a completely illegal war, Truman didn't get approval of Congress. Truman lied to the UN. They lied to the UN Security Council to get approval from the UN Security Council. The UN Security Council went against its own resolution, which doesn't even allow the UN to get involved in any conflict between two parties within one state, which was what this was. So, I mean, it was ridiculous, and it never should have happened, and 4 million people are dead in only 3 years. But it was October that China finally stepped up officially, publicly, like it was in the newspapers, where the Chinese embassy announced that they were absolutely not going to tolerate the command forces continuing to destroy and encroach into North Korea, and that they were going to come into to support North Korea. And on the day that they sent the Chinese ambassador to the UN to arrive in New York to officially file a complaint and make the statement, on that exact same day, MacArthur intentionally set up and implemented an attack to sabotage China's efforts to stop it.
Was that the Incheon landing?
No, you know what? I'm not going to say I know that it was Incheon landing, but MacArthur intentionally sabotaged the same day that that the Chinese were arriving at the UN in New York to say, we're not going to accept this. And MacArthur just, did his brash move. We know months later what happened to him.
Right. Now, to tie this with the theme of Strait Talk, cross-strait relations in Taiwan, I want to briefly talk about why China decided to enter the war. It's because history rhymes. The Korean War to the Chinese people reminded us so much of the first Sino-Japanese War. Now you hear Sino-Japanese, you think, oh, it's between China and Japan. What does Korea have to do with it? Well, if you look at a map, Korea is caught between these two countries.
Yeah, this is like provinces, right? Like Korea's just, we're here in Shenyang. It's a 3-hour drive to the Korean border.
We're closer to Korea right now than we are to Beijing.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. So the first Sino-Japanese War, a huge part of it was fought on Korea. And it was fought on Korea because to Japan, Korea is a land bridge and a springboard into China. And during World War II, in the years leading up to World War II and during World War II, Japan had the goal of expanding its empire, and China was a huge part of it because Japan's a little island and they needed more resources. So their goal was China and also the Pacific Islands. So it was because of this first Sino-Japanese War and China's humiliating defeat that allowed Japan to force China to sign the Treaty of Shimonoseki, which ceded Taiwan to Japan.
And the other islands.
Right. Taiwan and the pescadores were Penghu. Right. So Japan's defeat returned Taiwan to the Republic of China. And shortly after, within 4 years, the People's Republic of China was established, and the communists had defeated the KMT mostly on the mainland. There were still pockets here and there that were still under KMT control.
But it was official in 49.
Right. So to China, it's like we had just been newly established, and they're going to try to repeat this terrible history again with the more powerful army, the strongest in the world, that had just defeated Japan. So, or helped defeat Japan, I should say. So that's why, in the minds of Chinese people, it's like, if we don't fight now, we might not have a country to defend soon. Or if we don't fight now, we will have to fight sometime in the future. So it's better to pay the price now and ensure,
Yes, and it had to do with Taiwan as well.
Right.
One of the things that we cover on this, another tidbit in history, is that after the approval of the UN Security Council was secured to make this move in Korea, Truman then went on to...
Seventh Fleet.
Yeah, he sent the 7th Fleet into the Taiwan Strait. Now, what people don't know is that through all those years, Chiang Kai-shek, he was a bit. You said, I like the way you said it earlier.
He's a bastard, but he's our bastard.
He was a bad guy, but he was your bad guy, right? He was brutal. After he fled the mainland, I mean, look, Mao Zedong kicked his butt, and he flew the mainland to the island province of Taiwan, and he then brutally ran that island and declared martial law. I mean, he was bad in a lot of ways, and that's a whole nother story. But the point is that he was there and on the island, but his good side was he wanted to settle the conflict. He was perfectly happy to settle it and have a reunification. And nobody, of course, now the United States has their agenda, so they never mention this. He was very happy and willing to have a reunification.
It's a bit complicated. I'll get into that later.
Yes, it is complicated. And then the United States sent the 7th Fleet into the Taiwan Strait, right. and they sent weapons to the Philippines and all kinds of things that they did at that time.
So in the years leading before the Korean War, after World War II, the U.S. had these designs for China, which was to be its junior partner in the Asia Pacific, a role that Japan eventually fulfilled because the communists won on the mainland. But within these 4 years, they realized Chiang Kai-shek was kind of an incapable puppet. He kept on getting his ass kicked.
Better than that, okay? If you haven't yet read it, referencing James Bradley's The China Mirage, as he says it so well, the book, The China Mirage, that should be made, somebody should make that into a movie. He made it very, very clear. Chiang got together with the Song family back in the States. He married one of the sisters.
Yeah, Song Mei-ling.
Yes, and then the other sister, what did she do? Did she marry someone as well? I don't
Well,
remember.
one of her sisters married Sun Yat-sen.
Right, okay. Yeah. So, and then, and they were conniving with then Secretary of State Dean Acheson,
yes,
who was a real troublemaker.
Mm-hmm.
And they were conniving Roosevelt into believing that, Taiwan was the mainland and that Taiwan wanted to be part of America. And this was America's mirage. This was America's, delusional dream that you're going to take some other culture like Italy or France, and you're going to take America and you're going to go there, and all the French and all the Italians will want to become Americans and abandon their own beautiful, deep French and Italian history. And that's how they were thinking about China. And this is why Bradley called it it was a mirage. It was a ridiculous dream. But it was also because Chiang Kai-shek and the Song family got together and with Acheson, and they just basically told all these BS stories. It was this giant, ridiculous PR promotion campaign, and they bamboozled Roosevelt into believing all this garbage. And of course, it was never true.
That was mostly Song, actually.
Yeah. Okay.
Because
you're the expert, man. I've always admired you for that.
Thank you.
You are unbelievable on the details. So fill in the details.
Acheson was not
to Taiwan.
Acheson was not much of a friend of Chiang Kai-shek either, because in February of 1949, he was already coming up with backup plans, because he was like, okay, Chiang Kai-shek's not going to secure the mainland. The communists are going to take over. And once that happens, Taiwan is a part of China. So wherever Chiang Kai-shek goes, which will be Taiwan, they're going to go there and finish business. And Taiwan will be reunified. Taiwan will, I guess, in their perspective, fall under communist rule.
See? The pattern, because the pattern is exactly the same as it is today. What is the U.S. geopolitical strategy?
Encirclement.
Divide.
And encirclement.
Right.
Yeah.
They don't want to let parties come together. So this is what they do. They constantly sow chaos and instability. That's why they set up the situation in Ukraine since 2014. That's why they're supporting Israel now in Gaza. They don't want to let parties. China was doing extremely good developing its relationships in the Middle East, right? And now all of it's blown to hell, okay? They just all wonderful friendship and new progress with Saudi Arabia and Iran and the talks and everything that China was facilitating to make the world a better place, and the U.S. went in and just blew it all up. And that's what they were doing during this period of time regarding the Korean War and Japan and Korea and Taiwan. And they don't want to let parties come together and be successful and peaceful and stable. They just want to continue sowing chaos. And that's what they did in Korea. Korea was the beginning of it all.
Right. And they wanted Taiwan. Taiwan was part of the first island chain. So the first island chain runs from the Aleutian Islands down to Japan. Taiwan's right dead in the middle, and then it goes down to the South China Sea. And their goal was they don't care about Chiang Kai-shek's claims of being the legitimate Chinese government.
Yeah.
All they cared was this island cannot fall under communist rule, because once it does, our encirclement of the Eurasian continent is broken.
Yes, exactly.
That was what it is. So the U.S. was coming up with all these backup plans, saying, okay, what if Chiang Kai-shek falls, how do we prevent the communists from taking over the island? Well, maybe we can give Taiwan back to Japan. They thought of that idea for a while.
Wow.
Then the other idea was, okay, we'll let Chiang Kai-shek go and then we'll coup him. They tried to coup him a few times, didn't work. Another thing was before the establishment of the People's Republic of China on October 1st, 1949, Atkinson, or H.S. however you say his name, sent Livingston T. Merchant, a diplomat, to go talk to the provincial governor of Taiwan to say, hey, declare yourself a separate country. We'll give you millions in aid annually. And then once Chiang Kai-shek gets defeated on the mainland, he comes here not as a leader anymore, but as a refugee, so he doesn't have any more power. So as you can see, Chiang Kai-shek was falling out of favor in the U.S., but there were different cliques within the U.S. ruling class with different interests. And the business side of things, when you think of businessmen, you have to really differentiate between productive business, people selling products and services, manufacturing, and finance capital, which is more parasitic. A lot of the people who are doing the more productive side of things, they were like, hey, this new government is not a Soviet puppet. It is a popular government that has popular support. The U.S., you need to have a working relationship with it for our benefit so we can keep on doing business. Now, the military side of things was like, no.
All they cared about was control.
And keep Taiwan as an unsinkable aircraft carrier.
Encirclement and chaos.
And that's where MacArthur comes in. MacArthur fell into the latter camp. So up until the Korean War, the U.S. was like, you know what? Just whatever happens to Chiang Kai-shek, whatever happens to Taiwan, we'll just let it happen. And Chiang Kai-shek knew that. He knew he was screwed, which is why he was sending people to the mainland to enter talks on how to let him still maintain some sort of control over Taiwan, but reunify. But then as soon as the Korean War broke out, he started receiving newfound support. So he was like, you know what, stop that. We'll wait and see. Maybe we can take back the mainland. The U.S. didn't want him to take back the mainland, though, because the U.S. knew that the People's Republic of China was a popular government. They sent the 7th Fleet not only to prevent the communists from going to Taiwan, but to prevent Chiang Kai-shek from launching a counterattack, because they were like, okay, we have finally just stabilized the situation.
Stabilize the situation.
In favor of
meaning,
U.S.
Stabilize the situation, meaning separate them. To them, that's what they were trying to accomplish.
Right.
That wasn't stability. It was the opposite of stability, and that's what they wanted.
Yeah, and when Japan surrendered in 1945, the instruments of surrender refers to the declarations of Cairo and Potsdam, which talk about how territories illegally seized by Japan from China, namely Taiwan Island and Penghu, which they call the Pescadores, they call them Formosa and the Pescadores, are to be returned to China. This is written in paper. But the final peace settlements with Japan were not done until 1950 in San Francisco, the Treaty of San Francisco.
Right.
And the U.S., by design, left out China from the agreement. Their argument was, well, there's no consensus on which Chinese government to invite, so let's just not let either of them join the peace talks. And then the wording of it was Japan is surrendering Taiwan and the Pescadores, but it doesn't say to whom. So from then on, the U.S. started arguing, well, Japan never returned Taiwan to China. It just surrendered it, and we're just entrusting Chiang Kai-shek to managing the islands until final arrangements are made. But Chiang Kai-shek being, I said, he's a bastard, but he's our bastard, because in 1954, when they were drafting the Sino-U.S. Mutual Defense Treaty, Sino in this case being his regime in Taipei, Chiang Kai-shek maintained that Taiwan and Penghu are territories of the so-called Republic of China.
Yep.
And this was a signed document between Taipei and Washington. So, but with Washington signing this, referring to Taiwan and Penghu as territories of the so-called Republic of China, it effectively nullifies the theory of Taiwan's undetermined status, which sets precedence for the communiques with Zhou Enlai saying there's only one legitimate whatever. PRC is the successor state of the ROC. So even in those times, though, even though Chiang Kai-shek was interested in maintaining his foothold on the Taiwan area, he refused to formalize a two-China situation or an independent Taiwan. And the U.S. tried to get him to withdraw troops from Jinmen and Mazu, which are two island groups off of the coast of the mainland, on the mainland side of the Taiwan Strait, because by withdrawing his troops, it physically creates the distance between KMT-controlled China and communist-controlled China from a few miles to 100 miles. Yeah. So there were, he's a bastard, but he's our bastard. And the Korean War played a huge part in it, because without the Korean War, the 7th Fleet would not have entered. Chiang Kai-shek would have lost support. I would say Beijing had to put off Taiwan's liberation in order to save its frontier in the northeast.
Yes.
Because if it did not save the frontier in the northeast, Korea would have been... MacArthur wanted to use Korea as a springboard to launch an attack into China and the Soviet Union. And
Korea would now be America.
Right.
Period.
Because
they're still occupying South Korea.
Yeah. But the thing is, if it weren't for the so-called North Korean threat, the U.S. would not have had the incentive to allow South Korea to develop the way they did.
Yeah.
A huge part of it is because of General MacArthur over here.
Truman got rid of him.
Right.
And I mean, they didn't expect China to come back they didn't expect China to enter.
Right.
And China literally stopped the idea that U.S.-led UN forces were going to win on the Korean Peninsula. And the fact that China came in literally put a halt to that possibility. Right. Now, afterwards, it stalemated for 2 years. And, oh, by the way, you know the famous Chinese director, I remembered his name, Chiang Kai-ge?
Heard of him.
Yeah, Chiang Kai-ge.
Yeah.
So Chiang Kai-ge made the next Korean War movie, and he made a trilogy of Korean War movies over the last couple of years. And the first one already came out. In fact, I'm in the second or third one, and this time I'm not playing MacArthur. I'm playing General Clark.
The successor of his successor.
Yes. Ridgway replaced MacArthur.
Clark
and
replaced...
then and it was right at the end. Clark replaced Ridgway, and then very shortly after that,
signed the armistice.
Clark was the one who signed the armistice agreement. I sat at the table, and of course, that murderous dictatorial bastard Syngman Rhee refused to even be part of the signing of the armistice. I concluded, I'll let a little secret out about the Korean War documentary we're working on. I'll let out a little secret about that. In the end, you look at all the protagonists, you look at all the bad guys in the story, and there's lots of them, right? In the end, I would say who was most responsible for the Korean War was Syngman Rhee.
Really?
Yeah. He admitted, I have his quote admitting that he started it. The North Korea, obviously the theme of my Korean War documentary is that North Korea did not start the Korean War, and it didn't. They didn't start it, not even close.
Right.
South Korea started it.
A lot of people like to point out to the fact or the belief that the North Koreans fired the first shot on June 25th, 1950.
No, it's not even close.
I think whoever shot the first shot that day is irrelevant, because when we look at the U.S. Civil War, we don't talk about who shot the first shot. We look at how the issue came to be and all of the social contradictions behind the issue that led to the war. Yeah. And that's the case with the Korean War. The Korean War was an extension of the struggle between the forces of national liberation and the imperialists. The imperialists who were Japan before being replaced by a bigger imperialist power, the U.S. Yes. So, and there were many incursions into North Korea from the south.
It was going back and forth for months.
Yeah.
Let me cut to the chase on it with Syngman Rhee and MacArthur. So in MacArthur's case, I have the quotes, I have the history, I have the archives clearly laid out, and In MacArthur's case, what he said was that he acknowledged that North Korea wasn't even ready to start battle. They still only had 6 regiments prepared and were completely unprepared to start battle. So no, they didn't start an attack. Okay, they responded because it was the South Korean forces who had already crossed the 38th parallel multiple times, brought weapons in, and had made their way all the way to the famous city of Haeju. Right, so it was South Korea. Right. Okay, so that's part of the story. Syngman Rhee, I mean, why did he do it in the first place? He's Netanyahu of today. Okay, I'm telling you, Netanyahu, a lot of people surmise that Netanyahu started this war to save his own ass, okay? His position in Israel as the prime minister. And that's exactly why Syngman Rhee started the war in Korea then. Because
it was quite unpopular.
Well, right. The assembly, there was the Korean assembly, the legislature, and there was a total of 310, I remember, it was 310 delegates. And the latest vote, okay, Syngman Rhee only got like 47 votes and 260 votes against him. So he only had like 20% support. He was finished. Just like Netanyahu didn't have the support. And Syngman Rhee came out and said, I will start war as his answer. Instead of, did he step down?
It still didn't save him because he got overthrown by Park Chung-hee.
He didn't step down. You'd think he would have, no. He actually went to war. Now, previous to the war on the Korean Peninsula, his regime had already killed over 250,000 people. Right. So like the Americans...
It's like the Bodoli massacre, the Jeju massacre,
yes,
right? Yes,
I'm talking from 45 to 50.
Right.
So like, and I'm sorry to say this, but it's just the truth, like the Americans, they have no compunction about killing hundreds of thousands and millions of innocent civilians to get what they want. And that's the problem, and that's the realization of where we're at right now. You know, everybody's looked at Ukraine, and everybody's looking at Gaza and going, oh my God, we're appalled, we're horrified, you're slaughtering children, multiple children, daily. This is exactly what you can't do. This is the thing that's the most appalling thing in the world, would be to engage in military activity that results in the slaughter of innocent children, okay? Not only killed, which by now is like 20,000 women and children, but also an additional 10x multiple who their lives are ruined, amputees. You know, they've had their faces blown up, their legs and arms blown off. I mean, you know, disabled for life. They have no compunction to create this havoc regarding innocent civilians. And so the world today is shocked by this, okay? The world, I'm appalled. I mean, all of us, we are appalled. We cannot believe that Zionist Israel is doing this to the Palestinians, and they're doing it with United States funding and the bombs that the United States is providing. And the United States, Joe Biden, and all these other crazy Christian Zionists are like, yes, Israel has the right to defend itself. You're slaughtering children. But the revelation of this is so deeply disturbing to me as a human being. I'm living here, and it makes me understand, oh my God, I'm living here in China. This is a peaceful country. And not only that, not only the fact that China's not killing anyone and hasn't been since their founding in 49, okay, and we'll cover that later. This is a peaceful country. They insist on developing and rising in peace all across the world. They're not killing anybody else's innocent civilians of any other country, but it's
killing drug traffickers. That's about it.
I want to, yes, killing bad guys, criminals.
Yeah.
The realization of what they're doing in Gaza is so appalling, that they're slaughtering kids. Yet, it's not that realization. It's not that, Xiangyu. It's the realization that, oh my God, this is exactly what they've been doing for 7 decades.
Right.
And it started in Korea. You think Gaza's bad? You know, I'll look at the camera. Friends, you think Gaza's bad? The world is freaking out today because in the last 6 months, 40,000 innocent civilians are dead in Gaza. Now, they say some of them were Hamas. Okay, whatever. But we know half of them are children. Children have been slaughtered. And just from these numbers, like 20,000 children, the whole world today is freaking out. we are all so appalled. I want the world to understand that this is what the United States did on the Korean Peninsula, okay, another small piece of land, 4 million dead in less than 3 years. 1.5 million of those were civilians. And they decimated the whole peninsula of Korea. That's what the United States has done. And it's that they're doing, and then they did it in Vietnam, and they did it in Iraq, Iran, Syria. I don't have to go on and on and on. This is the part about it that's so devastating. And
Right.
You're a young man. You're a lot younger than me. And you're in your 20s, right?
I'm 31 now.
Oh, wow, you did hit 31. You look
Yeah.
like you're maybe 26, 27. Wow.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I know I'm getting old when I feel that's a compliment.
The thing is, I have to, I don't say any of this because I don't say anything I'm saying to be pro-China or anti-American. That has nothing to do with it. What it has to do with is I'm a father. Mm-hmm. I have a 12-year-old son. I look at him, I look at you, you're in your 20s, he's 12. He's like 12 going on 16.
Right.
These kids he's just blossoming now at his age of 12.
Formative years.
Unbelievable. He's 12 going on 16. So to me, I'm like looking at him and I'm looking at you and I'm going, well, you're not that far apart. I have the responsibility as a father to have to carefully and caringly and authentically and properly and accurately explain all this to him, because I need him to understand the world that he is growing up into, and you need to understand it. And of course, that's the thing about you. You're an amazing history expert on being as young as you are. That's what this is about. It's not about, I'm pro-China. I'm not pro-China. I'm not anti-China. I'm not pro-American. I'm not anti-American. I don't love America. I don't love China. I care about
humanity.
China. I care about I care about China because I live here. It's my home. My family's here, man.
Right.
Right? Your family's here in Shenyang. I got to meet your aunt, by the way.
Right.
I care about America because my family's there. Mm-hmm. Right? I care about Italy because my ancestors came from there.
Right.
That's it. Politics really doesn't have anything to do with it.
Mm-hmm. That's why I felt so emotional when I came to Shenyang for the first time in late 2019 and met my
That's when we moved
relatives.
here. Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we moved here five and a half years ago. Yeah.
So you were in Shenyang when I was here last time.
Wow, we missed you.
Yeah. No, I just feel so fortunate when I meet my aunt over here and my other relatives here, because what were the chances that they survived that war? Because they were getting shot at and bombed every day.
I want to point something out. I want to point this out that people don't realize this corridor of northeast China into Korea. Mm-hmm. Beijing's down here, and Liaoning is 800 kilometers up here to the northeast. Mm-hmm. In fact, you can drive along the north coast of the Bohai.
Yeah.
It's really, really nice. Mm-hmm. Along Beidaihe, Nandaihe, Beidaihe, and Huludao and Qinghuangdao and the Great Wall. The most beautiful part of the Great Wall is called Jingshan, I think. The most beautiful part of the Great Wall is actually there.
I got to go to that part of the Great Wall.
Yeah. It's much more beautiful than what's down near Beijing.
Badaling kind of sucks.
Yeah, that's the point. I think it's called Jingshan. And then right into Shenyang. People don't realize this. I feel like I have a calling to promote Liaoning Province. Mm-hmm. I do. And it's not just that. It's that when you get up here to Shenyang and then you come down 3 hours drive by car, you're at the North Korean border. You're at the Korean border.
Dandong.
Dandong. It's incredible. And what people don't know is that, I would call it like, what's some of the most beautiful places in America that people travel, or in places, the French countryside or the Italian countryside, the wine country, maybe Chianti, Liaoning Province, here in Northeast. From Shenyang, you go down east, you start and you go southeast into the ice wine vineyards. And I'm real good friends with Cai Longlin, Mr. Cai. Their ice wine vineyard is the best ice wine in the world.
Ooh.
In Europe. Like as good as Germany and Canadian ice wine. These are the real ice wine vineyards where they literally harvest the grapes in December. Mm-hmm. So the grapes are already frozen on the vine when they harvest them. So it's like really ice wine.
Oh, wow.
So pure, so amazing. And you go down through here, and the countryside is so beautiful. It's, like low mountainous countryside, and including Wunishan, five ladies mountain. What's it called again? Wunishan, yeah. And then from there, you curve south and you start heading to Dandong. And there's this area called Xiangyu as part of Quandian. And you are driving through there, and you are in paradise. And you're heading another hour and a half into Dandong.
Are you telling me I need to rent a car next time and do a road trip?
My brother came last month for the first time to China, and we did this 6-day road trip through southern Liaoning Province, from Shenyang down through the ice wine vineyard area, down through Quandian, down into Dandong. And of course, here's the big surprise. Huishan Great Wall. The Great Wall in Dandong. Nobody knows.
Yeah, the Great Wall is pretty long.
Yes. So there's the Great Wall in Dandong, almost to the ocean, and that's where we climbed the Great Wall. We went twice. It's beautiful. So not only you go to Dandong, wait a minute, what's in Dandong? The Great Wall. There's another portion of the Great Wall in Dandong, and it's a really nice climb. It's really, really beautiful. And then from Dandong, further down an hour and a half, and there's a ferry terminal out to Daludao Island. There's an island. Liaoning Province has its own tropical island with beautiful beach and hotels along the beachfront.
I didn't know that until now.
Right. Now, it's northeast China, so it's more like islands off of the coast of Boston, northeast, like New Jersey, New York, Long Island, like that. And Liaoning has that.
I guess as an Italian American, you're right at home.
It's unbelievable. It's there's this beautiful beach, nice sand beach, wide, dune buggies, really, really cheap, riding the dune buggies around the beach, and all of these nice hotels all along the beachfront. And all of this is part of Liaoning. And then you work your way back up to Shenyang. People don't realize how beautiful for tourism. I'm going to promote Liaoning.
Right.
I've got to do it. It's just so beautiful. I mean, I've been all over the world. I've been to the Caribbean. I've been to all the islands in the Caribbean.
Right.
I spent 2 months in Italy. I know beautiful is beautiful, and people don't know how beautiful Liaoning Province is. And now, key thing I got to tell you. Whether it's China or Southeast Asia, so whether it's China or Vietnam or Thailand or Malaysia or in a couple of Philippines, it's so inexpensive. And there's a problem in America now where costs have gotten out of control. My brother, my mom, people I know are freaking out about how expensive it's gotten to live in the United States. I don't know how the middle class is coping with it.
It's not coping with it. It's being hollowed out.
It's being hollowed. There's big trouble. And I want everyone to know you can leave and you can go to inexpensive places in the world, and that includes Southeast Asia. And that includes China. As you're traveling around here, my brother was just in shock because consistently, every day, everything on average costs 3, 5, 7, 10 times less than what he was used to paying for. It's just incredible. So your money goes so much further, and it's a safe, beautiful society. It's such a good, safe, stable society, and it's a shame that people try to give the impression that it's not.
What's really sad is because of the media hype ever since the latter 2010s in Taiwan. And the media over there is basically just Western mainstream media.
Yeah, same thing, right? So they've just
Chinese.
been feeding the Taiwanese people the same, Taipei Times, right? They've been feeding the Taiwanese people the same propaganda, anti-China propaganda crap that they've been feeding the American people. It's the same, right?
Now the working class people in Taiwan, in the rural areas, they don't really buy in the hype because they understand, hey, there aren't many opportunities in rural Taiwan, or we're farmers who buys our agricultural goods, the mainland. So we need good relationships with the mainland. But a lot of the white collar workers in places like Taipei, who are a little bit more westernized in the way they think, they buy into this hype. So then when I came over here to the mainland this time, some of my relatives in Taiwan were like, oh, you got to be very careful. The mainland's very dangerous now. They can get randomly arrested for thinking the wrong things. And I'm like,
unbelievable.
And I'm like, okay, guys, I have a cousin who used to come to the mainland for business trips. And now he's afraid to come, and he requests his company to not send him here. And I'm like, okay.
Why?
because of his paranoia.
because
There's no reason. Yeah.
Because he believes things that aren't true.
And I told him, okay, you are not Joshua Wong. You are not any of these color revolutionaries trying to incite disarray, like cause so chaos in this country. What you think
They
is your
committed
business.
crimes. They encouraged fires and assault on people.
They were building bombs.
I mean, the students were at the university building bombs. You think you're not going to get arrested?
Try that in America.
Right, exactly.
So,
It's just oh my God, it's so ridiculous.
Yeah, but they leave that part out of the news. So then they think it's just like thought crimes. And I tell my cousin, you're not Joshua Wong. You're not any of these leaders of these riots. You might not agree with the government here. You might be a Taiwan separatist, but as long as you are not propagating your ideas and inciting.
Hey, I didn't mean to interrupt. Finish your thought.
Yeah, and if you're not trying to propagate your ideas and incite dissidents, who cares what you think? The government here has bigger issues to worry about.
Yes. Well, here's one for you. Article 22. Mm-hmm. Do you know what Article 22 is?
Article 22
of Chinese law. Living here in China. Article 22 matters a lot. You know what Article 22 is?
Is it the one of freedom of speech?
Yes, it's freedom of speech. Do you know what it says? Article 22 says, I am not allowed to publicly harass, abuse, slander, and disturb another person in public.
In public?
Right, in public. How does that sound to you? I mean, does that sound like a reasonable law? I mean, in other words, in America, it's called disturbing the peace.
Right.
Okay, there's a law in America. It's called disturbing the peace. Okay, and what they did with the freedom of speech agenda is they did away with this idea that disturbing the peace matters. Mm-hmm. Now disturbing the peace is regarded as freedom of speech. Okay, I'm a professional speaker. I'll stand up in front of an audience and speak. Now, if you can imagine that, in fact, I was very grateful. I can't remember the name of the think tank right now in Beijing. They invited me to speak at the Basa, it's the Panda. They invited me to speak at the Basa Peace Forum, which was about, I'm going to say 4 months ago in Chengdu, out in Duzhangyuan, at the Panda Reserve, right? Shongmao Jidi, thank you. And I gave a speech in front of, I was one of the lineup of speakers and gave a speech in front of this whole ballroom full of government officials and business people from all over the world, and most of them from China, who had flown in for the event. Great. Now, who are you being rude to if you interrupted my speech? Let's say I'm giving a speech about peace in China, about peace. Mm-hmm. I don't know, maybe you're a warmonger and you like war, so you disagree with my words. Fine, okay. Do you have the right, does freedom of speech means that you have the right to come in and interrupt my speech?
No.
No, exactly. So now in America, they're actually promoting this idea. People are speaking on college campuses. Mm-hmm. And the faculty of the schools is saying to the students, if you want to publicly protest this speech, yeah, go ahead and go in and disrupt this speech. This is the height of, from the point of view of my being a professional speaker, this is not freedom of speech. This is not responsible behavior. This is the height of it. What it is rudeness. Mm-hmm. Okay, 500 people may have even paid money to sit in a chair and come listen to you. If a member of the audience decides to heckle you, that's another example, right? Mm-hmm. If a member of the audience or other members came into the room to disturb the speech, to disrupt you, they're disrupting the people. It's like, excuse me, I came here to listen to his speech. I didn't come here to listen to you. You're disturbing all of us, 500 people sitting in the audience who came here to listen to this man, whether we agree with him or not. Mm-hmm. Stop disturbing us. You're disturbing us who are here to listen to him, and we maybe even paid money. Mm-hmm. Okay? So this is what it is with a heckler in your audience. If a heckler stands up and starts asking you questions and bothering you, and you finally say, "Excuse me," okay, you're asking me question after question after question. You're disturbing my speech. You're disturbing the experience of the people in the audience. It's incredibly rude of you to do that. Keep quiet, shut up, leave. Do whatever you need to do, but stop disturbing the experience of other people. That's not freedom of speech. It's anarchy, it's chaos. It's disturbing the peace, right? America has that law. If I'm out on the street and I'm upset with you, okay, or I want to bother you, and it disturbs everybody else out on the street.
It's harassment.
It's harassment. It's disturbing the peace. It's creating instability. It's a crime. You're not allowed to make trouble out on the street.
Yeah.
By slandering, harassing, abusing, disturbing other people. It's the law in the United States that they've dropped, and now they just dropped it. It's on the books.
It's on the books in Taiwan as well, but then when it comes to these sort of color revolution activities,
yes, they are intentionally allowing chaos on the street.
Right.
That's what they're doing. They want a chaotic. This is why
they're like Mussolini's black shirts.
The government leaders in the States are so malevolent. They're intentionally saying, yes, you have your freedom of speech to go out and create chaos and disturb the neighborhood. And it's like, wait a minute. No, we don't want you disturbing the neighborhood. You shouldn't. You should be protecting the people and protecting the neighborhoods, not encouraging people to go and make chaos in public and protest.
Yeah.
You know, so this is the problem. This is the fake neoliberal agenda, and this has nothing to do with real free speech, which has consequences and responsibility. You have a responsibility, you have a responsibility to fellow human beings, and that's what I love about China.
Right,
is the society is so safe and so stable, and this is what most foreigners that we're all here with our families. It's amazing.
I might be getting into stereotypes, but you as an Italian American, you were the second generation born in America, third generation living in America, right?
Yes.
Don't you feel that a lot of the social values over here are quite similar to these?
Yeah, this is what yes, absolutely. The Italian, the family culture, Italy and China, we've always said, are much more compatible. Absolutely.
Go to Italian family gatherings, the food culture.
Yes.
Just like the amount of care they put into meal prep and all of that. It's the same with Chinese families.
Yes, exactly. Food culture is big culture, and family culture is core culture, and it needs to be, because it's the right and correct and natural way for societies to be stable. Chinese government is very clear about this. The family structure is the most important stability of society.
Right.
And that's why, in fact, they are improving the marriage and divorce laws to try and reduce divorce, because as any society modernizes, unfortunately, the divorce rate goes up, and it's happening here, and then they updated the marriage and divorce laws, adding a 30-day cooling off period and things like that to preserve marriage and family as the core of society, which it is.
Right.
And of course, this is all the stuff that they've abandoned in the United States.
Families are building blocks of healthy societies.
Yeah, they've abandoned all this in the United States to intentionally create chaos. And the DEI agenda and all these the trans agenda, all of these things are designed to intentionally create chaos and instability in society. And guess what? It's working.
What's astonishing to me is a lot of people who call themselves communists in the West are on board with all of this. But you come over here, this is a society led by a communist party. Does that stuff fly over here?
I don't know. It's really weird. Like Jackson Hinkle, he's pretty popular, and he just comes right out and says, hey, being a communist is terrific. And I look at it and go, I've never identified. I don't want to identify with being a Republican or a Democrat or a libertarian or a communist or a socialist. Please, I avoid labels at all costs.
You're just a normal person.
I care about the human condition in every country and how governments govern their societies. Don't label me anything else beyond that, right? And I think communists are more like just conservative people. Communists are just like, so communism, proper communism, is the government governing with policies that ensure the society and the people are all taken care of, not just the rich people.
Right.
And capitalism is just it's become, of course, Ayn Rand's Atlas Shrugged. If you don't know the reference, Ayn Rand referred to when capitalism would become mutant capitalism, and or the last stages of capitalism being fascism. Okay, in either way you want to describe it, I mean, that's where we're at right now. That is where we're at right now. It's really unfortunate, and China wants no part of it.
Right.
They're like, nope. And fortunately, they're maintaining and managing and controlling and being very important and being very wise about that. And the Chinese people, they know it and they like it and they appreciate it. Okay. Again, no matter what anybody on the outside says, they're full of baloney. Okay. The Chinese people want
stability.
Exactly want what the Chinese government is giving them.
I mean, every individuals may have they might have tiny complaints here and there about little minute details, but overall. Which is why I say, to the people who are saying, oh, the government over here in China is bad, they need liberal democracy. Well, I'm willing to bet.
I don't know what they're talking about.
I'm willing to bet that should mainland China become a liberal democracy tomorrow, and should the Communist Party of China be one of the parties that's still in existence, they'll consistently win for the next 30 years.
Yeah, man. I mean, it's really unfortunate, but the fact is the fact, right? Forget the propaganda, forget what press conferences out of the White House, what they say. The United States is now the most unstable, chaotic, violent society out there. It's the worst. It's not even close. They call themselves the best. It's bizarre. It's bizarre. I mean, you've got drug addiction out of control. You've got suicides out of control. You've got homelessness out of control. I mentioned this to you earlier. It used to be there's 2 blocks of homeless people. And I have a buddy in Los Angeles, and he tells me now it's just homeless people goes on for miles and miles. So that a government would allow, that the government leadership would, whether they're elected or not, by the way, right? It doesn't matter. Just you're in charge, and you've let your city become like this, and you're the government.
You've lost the mandate of heaven.
Thank you. You've lost the mandate to take care of your society. And what are you doing instead? You're just taking care of all the rich people. And that's what they've done. It's incredible.
Americans are taxed out of their asses. And for what? This money is used to bomb kids. It's used to cause problems in the other side of the world. Over here in mainland China, the tax rate's nowhere near as high as in America. But what do the people get? They get high-speed rail. Yeah. So it's a government that criminally neglects the American people.
Yes, that's what it is. I would call it criminal neglect of the American people.
Yeah.
And the American people don't need you or me. Now, I happen to be an Italian American, but I'm here in China for 25 years. China's my home. I've been watching what's going on. They're there.
Right.
Okay. I know lots of people back in America. They don't need you and me letting them know that their government is criminally neglecting them. They already know it.
I know they know.
And there's nothing they can do, and there's absolutely nothing they can do about it, which shows you how worthless the electoral system is. It's not helping. The situation, my father and I saw this coming in the 90s. We saw it coming. It started in the 90s after Reagan. And we saw it coming, and my dad was starting to shake his head. I was 30 years old at the time. And I'm shaking my head. I'm going, Dad, what's going on? He's like, I don't know what's going on, but man, they are taking this country in the wrong direction. And I went, yeah, they are. And it has done nothing but snowball worse and worse in this 30 years ever since. It's horrifying.
Now,
it's horrifying.
For most of these 30 years, you've been in China for 25 years.
I was here 25 years.
25 years.
Just by happenstance, that I would see all of this from this bird's eye view has been a life-changing experience for me. I never expected it.
So after you made that realization in the 90s, you moved here in 1999.
Yeah.
And you were first in Chengdu, and then you moved around quite a bit. Want to talk a bit about that?
Sure.
And all the changes that you've seen in this country throughout the course of your...
Well, like everybody else that's been here for 20 plus years, I mean, the thing is to understand is that not myself nor anyone, not any top geopolitical analyst or expert or business person on the ground here in China, I don't care if they were the CEO of the number 1 Fortune 500 company in the whole wide world and we're here the entire time in China, not one person, none of us, had a clue. None of us had a clue what was going to happen this 20 years. Well, it's now 25 years because we're talking from 99. We should just, I draw the line at 2000. Or 99 is not bad, actually, because just right as I got there, and then in 2000, China entered the WTO.
Right.
I was in Chengdu. The consulate started, the Chengdu consulate was there at the time, the U.S. consulate, along with MOFTEC and the Chengdu Foreign Affairs Office, Chongqing Foreign Affairs Office. They were doing a series of seminars all around the region, the Western region, about China entering WTO to teach the Chinese business people what it meant.
Right.
For them, for business, for the world, for China. And they asked me to be a part of that entourage. I was one of the speakers on
because you were teaching business communication, right?
At the time, yeah. I also got recruited by Motorola back then.
Right.
Well, back then, Motorola and Nokia, can you believe it? I mean, when
Names I haven't heard in a long time.
Yeah, when I arrived in China, the darlings of the world, the darlings, multinational brands of China back then was Nokia, Motorola, Siemens, and of course Volkswagen, because Volkswagen was the first.
Right.
They came in and did the taxis for the government. So, and that was those four. And now, of course, we still have Volkswagen. We still have Siemens, but it's different. But of course, Motorola and Nokia are just pretty much toast. Unbelievable. And so when I arrived in Chengdu back then, like I said, I didn't have a clue what was coming. No one did. No one did. And it was my dear friend Frank, who I just saw again. He's still my dear friend, the man who originally invited me at Chongqing Run to Sichuan. We just had dinner with him with my family over the summertime in Los Angeles. He's still in Los Angeles. We're staying in touch all these years.
Yeah.
And we were going back and forth between Chengdu and Chongqing. Chongqing being, of course, now, well, even back then, one of the biggest city in the world. It was like still 30 million people, like along with Mexico City, right? But nobody knew nothing about these places. Chengdu had one hotel, one international hotel, Hadi and Crown Plaza downtown, and Chongqing had one international hotel, the Marriott Round Tower, and that was it. Nothing else. Literally nothing else.
So the Chengdu and Chongqing I saw this time during my current trip to the mainland probably looked nothing like the Chengdu or the Chongqing you saw.
It was just unbelievable.
Right.
Yeah, people cooking along the streets, the shops, the restaurant, everything. The real local culture.
Right.
For 4.5 hour drive in an old bus, in the old buses, public buses between Chengdu and Chongqing. Now it's high speed rail, hour and 20.
Right.
Unbelievable. And then I moved to Shanghai, and Shanghai was great. I'm still a member of the American Chamber.
Right.
And
what year was it when you moved to Shanghai?
Just 1 year later, in 2000.
Oh.
But you mentioned something very important. You said to me earlier, back during the time of Korea, the Japanese occupation of Korea and the mainland, when was this, and something to do with Taiwan? And you were saying how the business people were trying to convince the United States, hey, the current Chinese government, yes, it was the 50s.
Right.
The Chinese
40s,
government, the 40s,
40s and 50s.
The government being formed was a popular government. They were for the people, and they were doing very good things, and they were. And so you need to get along with you need to get along. And so the business people were encouraging the United States government to not be provocative and to get along with the Chinese government at the time. And that is exactly what it is today. Right. You have the business people, I'm one of them, American Chamber of Commerce, all the big companies, they've invested billions and billions of dollars, have their expat families here in China, and the European Chamber of Commerce as well, German Chamber, all the chambers, right? They just want the governments to stop playing these political games and to get along, because business is the real world on the ground.
Right.
We have families to feed, there's business that needs to be done for the world to be as stable and peaceful and cooperative and as possible.
Let everyone make some money.
So I went to Shanghai and was doing all corporate training at that time. Yeah, and corporate training's great. People need to learn their skills.
Right.
Leadership and management and communication skills. I mentioned to you earlier, I was the first foreigner to get a mortgage on Hainan Island province from the Bank of China. I bought a condo on the beach. I bought an apartment on the beach in Sanya in 2003. I was way ahead of the curve on that one. No one knew.
I still haven't been to Hainan.
Yeah, but I wanted to get a mortgage. I didn't have quite enough money. So I walked into the Bank of China and said, I'm a foreigner. Hello, I love China. I live here. I want to get a mortgage. And they looked at me like I was out of my mind. They thought I was crazy. They had no idea how to do it, because actually, imagine this, ladies and gentlemen, imagine this. We're talking like the year 2000. Banks in China still weren't even issuing mortgages. Can you imagine that? Right? I mean, mortgages are a commonplace thing for home buyers in the West.
They're a necessity.
Since the 50s, 60s. Okay, it was the year 2000, and China was it was Shanghai and Beijing. The banks in Shanghai and Beijing were just starting to issue mortgages. First of all, property prices, like they were back in the 60s in America, were dirt cheap. They were dirt cheap. So people didn't need mortgages. They just were paying cash. Yeah. And then prices started going up and you needed mortgages. So I was the first foreigner on Hainan Island to get a mortgage.
Nice.
Yeah.
So you had your lawyer friend in Shanghai contact his buddies at the bank in Shanghai to walk the bank people in Hainan.
The bank people in Shanghai knew how to do a mortgage. And to do it for a local or to do it for a foreigner didn't really make much difference. It was just the whole idea of processing the paperwork and the amortization of a in this case like a 15-year mortgage. And they didn't know how to do it because they'd never done it. So I had a lawyer who liaised with the Bank of China in Shanghai who had already done it, and they got on the horn with the Bank of China down there in Hainan and said, hey, here's how you do it. File this paperwork and do this and do that. And they helped them get it done. So I was facilitating commerce.
Right. So then how did you go from the business world into media and film?
Yeah. Well, that's a great story because that was a wonderful shift for me. And I feel guilty because things got better for me career-wise when I shifted into media because it was because of the pandemic. And that's kind of the opposite for a lot of people with the pandemic who, got hurt and lost. But in my case, it ended up benefiting me. It was because in 2020, I saw again this ridiculous idea that people were blaming China for the pandemic, and it was just outrageous. More of this anti-China bigotry and U.S. government propaganda. Blaming China, instead of acknowledging the reality that no, China handled it better than you, and that's the problem. You guys mishandled it yourselves. But they can't admit that, so they got to blame somebody else. So they blame China, and that's a never-ending story. So I wrote an article about that, saying how absurd it was. And, it was just another article I'd written. It was
just from your heart?
Shortly after my second book on China, because I've written 3 books now on China. So I've written these articles. I've written books about my experience in China to bring truth to people. That's it, And I wrote this article, and for whatever reason, the next morning I got up and that article had gone viral on all the continents across the world as the time zones, as it hit Europe, and then it hit, first it hits Europe 6 hours later, and then it hits America 6 hours later, and then just kept going around. And over the course of a 2-week period, that article got millions and millions and millions of views and was translated into Spanish, and then China picked it up. And when China picked it up and People's Daily published it in Mandarin, my article was on the front page of Sohu and Toutiao and all this, right underneath Xi Jinping thing.
Oh.
And it was there for several days. So the whole world read it in Mandarin as well. And so next thing I know, I became real popular, and that's when CCTV, CGTN, Huawei, CCG, Center for China and Globalization, and other organizations contacted me and wanted to hear more about my life and experiences in China. And so that was just very fortunate. It was very, very fortunate that happened. And
then you were basically a regular guest for a while at the CCTV offices over here in Shenyang nearby, right?
Yeah, well, it was really cool. Xinhua headquarters, Xinhua News headquarters for Northeast China is right here, literally across the road.
Oh, wow.
And CGTN has a local studio. So they used to send a car and pick me up. I used to go over to their studios and do the shows. And, again, I cared about it because all I was doing was wanting people to understand what was really going on in China. And that matters because the lies at this point are horrifying.
Right.
I'm blown away by how bad the information is about China in the West now. It even happened again this morning. Some people from the Hudson Institute, I swear I'm going to sue them. It's just so ridiculous, saying that how China's persecuting and oppressing Christians, and I'm like, what are you talking about? My son had his first communion at the Catholic Church here last month, during Easter. And 36 new Catholics were baptized during the Easter Vigil Mass. It was so beautiful, just like back in America. And I've been going to church in China for 25 years. What are you talking about, right?
There's more Christians in China than in Italy.
There's more Christians in China than Italy. In Italy, in Europe, in America, Christianity is declining. Here in China, Christianity is growing. And all the churches are open. And there's oppression and persecution of Christianity in China. It really makes me ill. These people should be sued. They're sowing such bad information. It actually incites hate and a lack of safety in your daily life between people.
They're trying to do that to convince a lot of conservative Americans who are Christians to be like, oh, these people are targeting people like me.
Yeah,
I need to hate this country. It's kind of like what they try to do with Muslims in the media.
Same story. Same with the Uyghur Muslims. Exactly.
Right. Because they talk about how China's trying to oppress Muslims, but no, you go to any halal restaurant in China, it'll say there's signs saying please do not bring outside food, out of respect for for Muslims.
There's
because
Muslim restaurants all over China.
Right.
Get on the plane, go to Urumqi, land in Urumqi. A friend of mine, I asked him. I said, "Oh, you said you just went to Kashgar, which is in Urumqi."
Yeah.
Right,
in Xinjiang.
In Xinjiang. You just went to Kashgar. I go, can I ask you a question? I haven't been to Kashgar. I want to go. I go, so when you go to Kashgar and you arrive in Kashgar and you get in the car and you're going into Kashgar, he's a foreigner, by the way. I said, so is Uyghur culture everywhere? Or is there just like Uyghur neighborhoods? What's the story? I mean, I've never been there. And he said, it's everywhere. So if Uyghur culture is being oppressed and persecuted, why is it everywhere? It at least would be confined to certain neighborhoods, right? And he says to me, no, it's everywhere. So I'm just like, oh my God. And they say, here's this article about this lady, just another lady overseas, Uyghur lady, saying, oh, my brother's in jail. He was arrested just for the crime of being a Uyghur. I go, wait a minute. Okay, if your brother was arrested for the crime of just being a Uyghur, why are there 12 million Uyghurs in Xinjiang walking around freely? Why aren't any of them arrested just for being a Uyghur? Because that's what they are. They're Uyghurs too. So why aren't any of them? They're walking around free. And so this is people fall for this crap. They fall for this propaganda. It's really sad.
I was at a Xinjiang restaurant in Chengdu.
Dapanji.
Yeah, and a lot of the staff were Uyghurs, and they were speaking in their Uyghur language to one another.
Yeah.
So I mentioned that on Twitter. I was just like, well, if they're actually committing cultural genocide, why did I see what I saw? I'm not even in Xinjiang.
It's all so absurd, actually.
So they were telling me that I'm on a guided trip, and I'm like, I bought my own tickets. I don't have a party guide. I'm just.
I gotta say, Western propaganda brainwashing with their excuses and ways of covering these things is brilliant, and because it's so widespread, unfortunately, it's effective as well. Yeah. And it's a really disturbing problem.
Because more than half of the world's media is owned by these U.S. companies.
It's bad.
Fund managers.
Situation is bad, and the same people and the same organizations who are lying, saying that there's oppression and persecution and killing in China. Number one, that oppression and persecution and killing in China doesn't exist. You're lying. It doesn't exist. And number two, you are also, we find out, a Christian Zionist who fully supports the oppression and persecution and slaughtering of children in Gaza today. So you're a despicable, lying.
You're not a good Christian.
Bad word. I was just going to say a really bad word, and I didn't for the podcast. You're certainly not a Christian. Yes.
At least not a Christian in deeds.
Unbelievable.
Whereas I feel like in Chinese society, I am personally not a Christian, but
China's more Christian than the United States.
Indeed.
Period. You know what? It's not even about religion. We could talk about Jesus. We could talk about Buddha. We could talk about other spiritual figures. It's the idea of what it means to be a proper person,
Right.
which is not to offend or harass or abuse or violently violate other human beings. Period.
yeah.
That's it. Just let's keep it in generic terms because, we're not trying to convert people to
Right.
Christianity.
Right.
Just you need to be a person of goodness and integrity and character, including Confucianism, by the way.
Right.
Which just says practice virtues, which is patience, self-control, be a good person toward others. That's Confucianism, 3 of the 6, right?
Right. And a common saying in Chinese is 做人, like, which literally means being a person. Like I guess a more accurate translation of the meaning is being a proper person. And
Yes.
it's just constantly
Yes.
drilled into the heads of kids. Like
Yes.
you need to know how to be a proper person.
Yes. Something happened. I think I want to wrap this podcast up by bringing this up with you. Because we mentioned it earlier, and I don't have an answer, and you don't have an answer. I want to put it to the audience. I want an answer. Something happened in China a few years ago where the society suddenly became far more lovely, safe, and stable. I don't know if you know that. Now, I've lived here 25 years. So again, I was in Chengdu in 99. I was in Shanghai from 2000 to 2007. I was in Hainan. I married my lovely wife, who's again from here in Dongbei. We spent 3 years in Hainan Island. Then we spent, 5 more years in Shanghai, back to Shanghai. Then we spent 2 years in Hangzhou, nice city. And then we moved here 5.5 years ago to Liaoning, to Shenyang. And plus we traveled to many, and I've done a lot of business in other cities.
Right.
So I know the whole culture. I know the whole society. I know it from the plastic chairs in the local villages, right on up to, like I said, I'm at government. Thank you God. I'm at government conferences, invited to be a speaker, high level, 5-star. I know the whole society, the government side, the private sector side, the high, the low, the clean, the dirty, the polished 5-star, the rotten, 0 health inspection, street, food. I know it all. Something happened specifically in China from about 6 years ago where the society suddenly, over these last 6 years, became even more safe and stable. It's amazing now. It wasn't true when I lived in Shanghai. If I left my jacket in Starbucks at the chair and got up to order my coffee, there was a much greater chance that there was a thief and they were lurking and would steal my laptop or steal my bag or steal my jacket. And then the workers in the Starbucks would, this is like Lujiazui or there's another neighborhood in Shanghai I can't remember right now, maybe around Jing'an, and the workers would be like, don't leave your jacket. And so it was a legitimate worry, like it is in Italy, that there's thievery and pickpockets and stuff like that.
Right.
People are going to take your stuff. And even guys walking along People's Square, would steal pickpockets. This stuff existed like it does in Italy's very bad too. And in America, lots of countries. But now it's like 90% less. I'm not exaggerating.
In 2007, I was on a trip on the Li River in Guilin, and I left my camera bag on the seat for a little bit, and then I went back. Someone had gone through the bag. Nothing was taken, but someone had gone through the bag to see if there was anything of value. Yeah. Now, this stuff doesn't really happen anymore. I mean, I bet there are still cases of it happening, but it's just not that common. You're not likely to run into it.
I'm telling you, it's down 90%. I'm amazed. It first happened to me a few years ago in Shanghai. I was in a grocery store. I don't know what happened. I was in a grocery store. I was just, shopping, whatever I was doing, going around. And I had cash. Nobody has cash anymore. Right. I had cash in my pocket. And honestly, somehow the 200-300 folded RMB fell on the ground. I don't know how. What? People came running to me. Oh, sir, you dropped your cash. I was like, whoa, oh God, thank you so much, right? And this has been the case with bags, stuff, phone, laptop, backpack, coat. It doesn't matter. Okay? Now, when you leave your stuff, somebody sees it and they look at it and go, somebody left their thing over there. And everybody just leaves it there to give the person, they're thinking that the person will come back. They'll remember that they forgot it and will come back to get it. And you go back later and it's sitting right there. And it's hours later. I've had this happen so many times. I had a bag. We went shopping. We had a bag of stuff. And we stopped in a store to look at, we stopped in a store to look at gadgets. I put the bag on the shelf and then I was playing with the gadgets and then we left and I forgot the bag. Like 4 days later, my wife's like, hey, wait a minute, where's that bag of stuff we bought? And I was like, oh, I left it in the store. I went back to the store. This is 5 days later. Says, I left the bag on the shelf. And she's like, yeah, we have it right here behind the counter for you. You know, unbelievable. Absolutely unbelievable. And I don't lock my bike anywhere I go anymore. I don't lock my bike.
Unimaginable in most other places.
I don't lock my bike. I go everywhere I go. I don't lock my bike. You know, now, of course, I probably will get it stolen one of these days. But the point is, it's been all this time that no, it doesn't get stolen.
If it gets stolen, though, the police will probably find it.
It's incredible. It's absolutely amazing. I don't have a full explanation for it, except that people are just being more decent, and they're like, no. Oh, here's another thing that happens in Shenyang. People with scooters would leave their helmet. They leave their helmet hanging on their scooter handlebar.
And they don't get stolen.
No one takes the helmets. You can't do that anywhere except here, right? So I'm asking lots of people out there watching this podcast why this is happening. It's incredible this last 6 years in China. It has become so safe and so stable. People across the spectrum of the society have all gathered up to say, be a proper person. That's it. I don't see any major, is there some kind of major news campaign on mainstream media? I don't see it in China Daily. I don't see it in Global Times. I only see that Xi Jinping wants to build a prosperous society for everyone. You know, this kind of normal words of what the government should say about how they want the society to be. But I don't see any kind of a specific broad PR campaign that addresses this.
I haven't noticed it either.
It just happened gradually in this, what I have to say, remarkable society. So something happened. I want to know, I don't know what it is, but what a beautiful thing to be able to share with everyone.
Right. I have one last question. A lot of people who know this now about you are probably wondering this too. How did you get the role of MacArthur? How did your acting career begin? You know, I had done a lot of acting previously in the early 2000s. In fact, I did Yao Bai Ni Lang, Dianshiju, with... Dianshiju is TV drama, by the way.
And it was called Yao Bai Ni Lang, and I had a lot of lines. I shot for weeks and weeks.
Were they Chinese lines or?
Pure Chinese.
Oh,
I did
nice.
Pure Chinese. I did good. I worked so hard. In Chinese, no overdub, and it was with Zheng Zhuwei, the little Hong Kong superstar guy, Zheng Zhuwei.
Yeah, the goofy guy.
It was with Zheng Zhuwei. He's amazing. It was with Zheng Zhuwei and Ye Tong and Hu Bing, and so that was really cool.
Pretty
and
big
I did
names.
I did some others. Yeah. And
It's funny how they didn't overdub you speaking Chinese, but in speaking English they overdubbed you because of that situation.
Yes, exactly. So I did really well with the Chinese. And then I didn't do a lot for a while. So then I got popular in media again because of the article. So now I was on TV and I was on the media. I was on the shows talking about China on CGTN. I was on Liu Xin's show twice. And I was on the show with Shui Qinduo and others as well. It was wonderful. And then CCTV called me to do Xixing Manji. I was on the road for 32 days with the CCTV crew.
Covering the Long March?
Going through the last part of the Long March, all the way through Gansu, after they came out of the wetlands, which was a horrible period, and then into Gansu and through Shanxi to where they finally met up with the Soviets in Yan'an. I covered that part. 32 days. We went 4,000 kilometers in the vehicles, with the CCTV camera crew. It was amazing. So I did all that. Next thing I know, I get a phone call. I'm like, come to Beijing. I'm like, what? We're doing a war movie. You got to come. We're doing crossing the Yalu, Kwaguo Yalu Zhang. Ni guolai, ni yanda, yo tusi yan. Okay, what? I trust people. I worked with people for many years. I don't worry about it. Okay, I'm coming. I'll come cast. So I go to cast, and they had the idea in their head that they were going to cast me for MacArthur. Oh. And then they wanted to confirm that. So they, now you're doing a casting and a fitting. So they're putting the clothes on you, and they're shooting.
Your corncob pipe?
Yeah, the corncob pipe and everything, the sunglasses, everything. The hat, the leather jacket.
Do you have the hat with you?
Yeah, no.
You don't?
No. It's hard to find a replica of that. And they're expensive. Oh. But, so I did that, and then actually it was the lady in wardrobe. There was the lady in wardrobe. She was she was the chief wardrobe lady, is all I can say. She was obviously the boss of the wardrobe area. And they had taken me around, changed my uniform several times. They're taking shots, I'm casting, I'm doing lines. And then they finally brought me back to her again. And they brought me back to this lady, and this lady comes walking up and out, and she immediately looked at me, looked at them, and went, just like, she didn't even speak. She just went. So she just immediately gave it her approval. I swear I think it was her approval was more important than anything else. And to this day, I don't know who she was. She was like the boss lady in the wardrobe area. And then after that, I'm sorry to say, I don't remember the name of the famous director. Then they were like, okay, last step. And they had to take me. The director was on set shooting. I remember it was late afternoon. And then they took me to the director on set and said, okay, we're looking for your final approval here for this guy to be MacArthur. And da mudza. Da mudza. And that's it. That's how I got MacArthur.
Well, it was certainly great having you, Mr. Mario Cavolo, and General MacArthur on my show, sharing all of these interesting stories. I took notes about you. I had a little rundown in mind, but then after we talked, I'm like, you know what? Let's just talk, because our conversation's far more interesting than whatever I had.
History, right? I mean, our conversation probably, if we followed a script, would have probably been a lot more political.
Right.
And when you came and you started telling me about your family here in Shenyang and how MacArthur affected your family in the 1950s in Shenyang, I got to tell you, that really hit me. I'm like, whoa. That's incredible. Mm-hmm. So we talked, I hope we did a good job of talking just now more from this personal point of view of the history of China, especially here in the Northeast. It's amazing. People don't know.
And this is just what I want from my show, because a lot of what is missing from mainstream media, it's not even about the political views, but it's just the human element. It's totally removed, so this whole civilization, the people, can be demonized for the benefit of, just a small minority in the West.
Is bad news.
Right.
Bad news. By the way, you live full-time in Taiwan.
Yes.
Yes. So I'm saying it right now, no matter their malevolent intentions, okay, I think you and I both know that underneath the reality that what's happening is that there's a rich, deep, and long and very high-quality relationship between the mainland and Taiwan.
Of course.
And the people, they all get along fine.
Right.
Leave the people have no malevolence between one another.
For the most part, yeah, there is none.
Exactly.
Because
back and forth across Fujian, the strait there down in Fujian, back and forth, Zhuhai now, it's incredible. The trade going on, 47% of Taiwan exports coming to the mainland. I'm telling you, because of China, and because of the KMT, because of the good people on Taiwan Island, forget the DPP, forget Lai Ching-te. It doesn't matter that he's the president because they lost the legislature.
Right.
Okay? Forget those troublemakers and forget the United States. No matter what they're doing, I've said it before, I'm saying it again, mark my words, there will be no war with China over Taiwan. I don't care how it looks, I'm telling you, and that's what I have to say.
I believe that too.
That's right.
Because let me tell you this, Taiwan has been integrated into Chinese civilization for 400 years.
It's all right now. It's far more integrated than they want you to let you know.
Exactly.
That's the point.
And even before then, contact, 1,000 years, ever since the Song Dynasty. So for much of Taiwan's existence as Taiwan, people think, oh, Taiwan was not a thing until 1949. No, Taiwan's history begins
Way
before 1949. For the longest time, what it meant to be from Taiwan was not animosity towards the mainland. It wasn't anti-communism, because communism didn't exist for much of Taiwan's existence as Taiwan as a part of Chinese civilization.
Exactly.
And this is just a drop in the bucket, and things will return back to normalcy. What we have right now is an exception to the rule. And when history runs a...
Oh, you mean this whole overall
Right.
situation.
And also
Yes.
before then, for a while, Taiwan was more prosperous than the mainland, also a historical anomaly.
Yes.
Yeah, so after history runs its course and the equilibrium is reached, we're going to see, this area, it'll do fine.
Well, let's not forget, it's China's century.
Right.
And let's not doubt that.
Right.
Okay, this is China's century. China already dominates world trade and manufacturing, and the degree to which they are already dominating world trade and manufacturing is still increasing. So the United States is freaking out.
Right.
I think they have good reasons to freak out, but I don't think that being malevolent and the military approach is the right way to go.
We're moving towards multipolarity. The unipolar world order is dying.
Yeah, not according to some very malevolent American politicians
Right.
and other leaders whose goal is one thing and one thing only: American dominance. That's their goal, American dominance. It's a very sick. It's a very sick situation.
There's room for everybody to cooperate and prosper, but there's no room for hegemony, and they need to come to terms with this fact.
There's no way they're going to cause bloodshed here in Southeast Asia.
And you know why?
No way.
It's because the Chinese people have proven their determination and will of defending the sovereignty of this country during the Korean War.
In peace.
Right.
Yes, in peace.
So, Mr. Mario, thank you very much for coming on my show. It was a pleasure meeting you for the first time in person, visiting with Shenyang. I will be back in the city in the future because I have family here. And when I
want to meet your aunt.
Right, I will make that happen. And hey, there's one part of China you haven't gone yet, Taiwan.
Oh yeah.
When you're there,
you're my tour guide.
yes, you have a tour guide. I'll take you to Sun Moon Lake, Ali Santoroko Gorge, all over.
Nice.
Right.
forward to it.
We can visit. We can go to jail too. The Green Island jail, where all the political prisoners used to be locked up by the KMT.
No way.
Yeah, because I saw one of those in Chongqing, and I was like, wow, this reminds me of Green Island. And I haven't gone to Green Island yet. I've only seen pictures, but it's on my bucket list. So
Gotta
yeah,
go.
thank you very much.
Thank you, Xiangyu.
Yeah, and thank you all for watching this. I think it was a very interesting conversation, and I hope you guys feel the same way. Thank you. That was my interview with Mr. Mario Cavolo. I hope you enjoyed the conversation we had. For more talks like this one, please be sure to subscribe to Strait Talk with Xiangyu on wherever you get your podcasts, as well as on YouTube or Rumble. If you have any feedback or topic suggestions, shoot me an email at straighttalk@xiangyu.tw. I'd now like to thank my upper-level patrons and channel members, Alvin Jia, Wang Yijing, Pernell Sima, Michael Kim, Coconut, Victor, and Alaskan Land Bridge Project. If you like what I'm doing and want to support me sharing perspectives of Taiwan and beyond not covered by mainstream media, please consider becoming a patron on Patreon, becoming a member of my YouTube channel, or by making a contribution to any of the links in the show notes. See you guys in the next episode.
还是人情